my name is Eleanor, and I'm going to add Dr. Victoria James. Is that the right way down for you or not?
I'm here. Hello.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me? Everything all right?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
You're in your garden.
Yes, I went for a floral theme, mainly because my desk is not tidy, and I don't have a very beautiful shelf backdrop.
You got
Readily
dressed.
prepared.
Well done. You got dressed. Well
Yes, I did. We cooked our hair.
these days.
We did our hair special. Chimera better appreciate that we did our hair, especially.
I've got lipstick on. Look.
Oh wow! You've just raised the bar there. I am wearing mascara, but you know, everyone's not realizing why people on TV wear 10 million bits of makeup because obviously it all just disappears. What's your beverage of choice this afternoon?
Hello. Oh, we got some.
Oh, you're very good.
With us. Hi. Nautilus Book.
Hello, everyone.
Sylvan historian and
The director approves. Hi, Anne.
Ionios, Joe Cat. Hi. Don't
Got some fruity buns.
Huddy, hello. I'm going for like the soft drink. I'm going for the soft drink.
Victoria is representing the soft drink.
I've got a talk and mix ups. Cheers.
Okay. Cheers. I mean, some people see Pimm's as like fruit juice anyway, so.
That's true. That looks a bit, yes. No, that looks right.
There's lots of fruit in there. Get my 5 a day.
Healthy lockdown eating. Well done.
Thank you very much. So, how have you been? How are you doing?
Well, you know what? I think authors are probably, best place of anybody to be dealing with this kind of fine. I mean, it's a bit like being on deadline, but without having to worry about handing a book in.
Okay.
Yes, basically, it's, and I do feel terrible saying that because I live in central London. So, I mean, certainly a couple of weeks ago, we would be hearing ambulances, and you couldn't mistake the fact that these were very strange times, and that there were people out there who obviously were, not as lucky as I am, and probably many of us are, for whom this has kind of almost felt like a holiday. I found it really hard to be productive, actually. Yeah, maybe that's just the good weather and the fact that any British person, like the minute the sun comes out, just loses.
It's going to go in 5 seconds. I have to go outside now. I have to go over.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to disappear. I mean, I've tried to work out a way of being able to try and get some work done outside. Absolutely, and obviously people who are able to, I don't know, dial things back a little bit. That's obviously a really brilliant position to be in. Thankfully, I some of my stuff has been able to carry on. But yes,
at the beginning of all of this, there were all those sort of memes going around on Twitter saying, like, if you haven't written your lockdown novel, do you even?
You haven't done your side hustle or learned a language.
It was like, go away. Go away, God, you awful people. Not to mention, I suspect that a large number of agents were probably quaking in their boots at the thought of, kind of Emily St. John Mandel kind of post-pandemic stuff that's going to be flooding their inbox in like about 3 months' time. So
I have a novel. A global pandemic happens. It's very inspiring. No, it was an example.
Great. Turn sideways. Your hair looks amazing.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh, of course. I completely forget that not everyone of course, because I was thinking, I'll see Vic in London in July and Chimera in June. I had that done in October. So it's all for me. Actually, yeah, it's quite useful having another half who can sort that out. But yes, neatened up, especially for Chimera. I hope you appreciate that. But yes,
I do, and I tell you what's also wonderful is, I think the books community has really been dealing with this well. I mean, we're so sort of connected on social media anyway. We're such a bunch of friendly people, and we support each other and network and know each other and shout each other out. And I've seen a lot of, like the big book festivals. I mean, like the really big book festivals, like, London Book Fair, sort of shifting things online.
Yes. They announced a YA panel with the bookseller, actually, I think just earlier today. I think, maybe don't quote me on that, but there was a YA panel that's been revealed. So it's nice to see that visibility for, I mentioned YA too, obviously, because of your Gilded Cades trilogy.
Yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, what's great is that like every kind of corner of sort of the books industry is doing this sort of thing. So if we're not too excruciatingly boring in the next half hour, then people will be like, "Yay, this works!" I mean, I was tuning into Simon Savage earlier. If you don't know Simon Savage, I mean, like I just love his booktube, his chats. Who doesn't want to sit down for a cup of tea with Simon Savage? And now he's
from where I grew up, so it's a little bit of home from Simon Savage. Yeah, I grew up in the Northwest. Had it more of a Scouse accent when I was a child, but there you go. That's another story. I was just going to mention your Instagram and Twitter account. You're going all in on the exercising and the yoga.
Yoga, let's be clear, like only half of this is exercise. The other half of this is me like failing to bend my knee at like 180 degrees. But it is really nice. I do feel that Adrian,
sorry, go on.
Well, I was going to say, I think what's really nice about it, I know that obviously, like on Twitter, sort of yoga as sort of like the most sort of basic white lady stuff has been getting a bit of a ribbing. I am that basic lady, but it's distracting. If you let yourself go, when I'm kind of in that space, then I'm not thinking, oh, at 2:30, what are the latest set of statistics going to be? At 5:00, what is the government going to be announcing? Because those have kind of become sort of moments in my day, and they're quite, those are quite difficult moments. So it's nice to also have like, yay, 9:00 yoga, yay, 4:00 chat, like yay, 8:00 Zoom drinks. It's been a really nice way of just tuning in and sort of chilling out and I don't know, I think I'm getting fractionally bendier. I think I'm gaining like maybe about an extra sort of degree. And the really nice thing about doing exercise classes in Zoom is that no one can hear you swear, which I do quite a lot.
The whole subconscious thing. That's just a little bit more removed, which I do think is quite nice about working out from home.
I'm not one of those people that switches their video on.
Yeah.
I remember like the first time I came into a Zoom chat and there were like all of these sort of tiny women in their sort of sweaty Betty sort of yoga gear, and one of them had obviously like set her camera up. She was in front of a fireplace. She was along the fireplace. I was like, oh my god.
Was there a dog just lying there quite artistically? No.
Yeah, cats. Sort of. I like.
Okay.
I like it when I walk in. That's light relief. Sadly, I don't have one to offer up. Otherwise, I'd plant it right in front of the camera and then get behind it for my own efforts.
Yes. Pets on social media. That's definitely a thing as well. So you said you found it quite difficult to write in the beginning. Do you feel like you're writing a little bit more?
No, I'm not writing at all at the moment.
Okay.
I'm just enjoying giving myself that break.
Nice.
It's yes, and actually I think that's worked well for me. I mean, I know that other people, so the lovely Lucy Hounsome, I mean, she has turned into this sort of demon of productivity. She's got like 50k down. Like I see her daily updates, and I'm like, oh my god, like stop, you're making me look bad. So yeah, I mean, for some people it's totally worked. It's totally worked like that. For me, no. And actually, you know what? That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. Creativity comes in waves. You can't sort of push it. And if you're not feeling it, I'm not going to be spending my time just sitting at the keyboard, like bashing out rubbish. Nobody wants to read that.
Because the first person who's going to read it is probably you the next day, and you're like, oh, what was that? What was I thinking? Great. So, shall we move to the topic of today's? I have the lovely hardback.
You have the OG edition.
I have the OG.
I just got the paperback. So,
oh, look at that! We didn't plan this. This has just happened.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Sitting in boxes in Waterstone's warehouses up and down the country.
Yes.
Copies of this beautiful paperback that I don't think anybody has seen in the wild because it came out during lockdown.
Yes, of course. Well, when was it out? Was it out a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah. So this paperback came out like about 3 weeks ago. Yeah. So isn't it apt? Look at this baby. Oh, it's such beauty, and no one has this. No one has this. So they'll be waiting in bookstores. They'll be waiting in bookstores when this is all over. Or they are actually at the moment. It is on promotion on Kindle. It's 99p on Kindle till the end of the month, and you get
99p. Bargain.
But yes, no, there's my baby. So yes, it's not exactly a. It wasn't like a debuting in the middle of lockdown, which I know was really tough, really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
But yes, hey, my paperback, no one has yet seen it.
But there we go. It's a surprise for everyone once they leave lockdown. It's like, what's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to go to a bookshop and I'm going to get a Sanctuary paperback. So maybe for those who are unfamiliar with
I put toilet rolls above that, and I think most of them did.
I mean, fair.
Put toilet rolls above that.
Would you like to tell everyone a little bit more about Sanctuary?
Yeah.
Your own lovely words.
So it's kind of partly a sort of police procedural, I guess, but with magic. It's like my earlier books, I love to write in worlds that are basically ours and are very recognisably ours, but which have magic, because basically my whole life philosophy is everything is better with a little dash of magic. So this one is set in a contemporary America, very recognisably the US of today. Even has some presidential tweets in it that may have a ring of familiarity to it. So it's set in a sort of little affluent town in Connecticut, and it focuses on a coven of witches. So in the world of Sanctuary, a coven is not a group of people with magic. It is a witch and her assistants, her friends, those who work with her, and sort of share their energies with her. So it's a witch and her 3 friends, and in a way the coven is a way for me to explore kind of the dynamics of female friendship. I mean, it's about female friendship when it's put under extraordinary pressure, and the nature of that pressure is that the son of one of the women dies at a house party, and the finger of suspicion seems to point to the daughter of the witch, who is his girlfriend. So yes, it then sort of follows the cop who has to sort of try and unravel all of this. So it's very much about sort of the shifting pressures mostly within female friendships, also within marriages, also within professional relationships, and how they all act kind of under the pressure of this one kind of awful event. What happened and why did it happen?
So you say that you very much like creating worlds similar to our own and adding a dash of magic. Had you always wanted to write a book that had such a strong that drew upon witchcraft as much as Sanctuary did, with I suppose with ancient texts and the different not covens, but the different elements of how people came to the practice? Not wanting to.
That's interesting because kind of in a way, no.
Okay.
I mean, I went to an all-girls school. I was like the scholarship girl, who was kind of given a free education in return for kind of improving the school's exam results, at this really quite sort of weird and intense sort of all-girls school. And I remember it was always kind of the cool girls who were into magic, into tarot, who'd sort of draw pentagrams on themselves with biro. And I was definitely not one of the cool girls. I was the SWAT. I was like the swatty one in the corner. Like nobody asked me to join their coven at school. So I didn't kind of sort of grow up with but I think for a lot of girls and young women, that's a really powerful sort of metaphor of not even a metaphor. It's a powerful reality of kind of sort of friendship. And sort of a way of discovering yourself. So that was always sort of there, kind of at the back of my mind when Sanctuary was sort of developing. But the thing that sort of really precipitated Sanctuary. So my day job is I'm a TV director. And I was in the US. I'd been covering the last presidential election. So I was in the US when the women's marches were happening, and then I was in sort of San Francisco. There was this sort of feminist bookshop that was selling sort of pussy power T-shirts, and there was this sort of incredible kind of outpouring of sort of women's anger, and women's kind of determination to just sort of like not put up with this shit any longer. And it was sort of during that the singer Lana Del Rey put out this sort of really cryptic tweet about, maybe the witches of America should hex the president. And then not long after, this sinkhole opened up on the lawn of the White House. If you're a writer and things like that happen, bells go off in your head. And I just kind of thought, wow, like, wouldn't that be amazing if we lived in a world where sort of witchcraft was how women could express their anger and it could materially affect the world around them. That would be a powerful force. It would be a powerful force that would need to be controlled as well, and that's obviously sort of a big part of the book, like the magic structure in the book. I mean, anyone who writes fantasy of any kind or has magic, as a writer, you have to solve that problem of how do you deal with effectively having one bunch of people who are sort of superpowered compared to everybody else. How do you limit them? How do you stop them becoming an elite? In my first trilogy, they are the elite. No one has been able to stop them. They've seized power. But in the world of Sanctuary, what's happened is, this is a modern world like ours, and it's happened in the same way that, sort of women's sense of their power, they've just been sort of socialized into a kind of sort of conformity and submissiveness, and there are laws that say what witches can and can't do, and there are harsher penalties if witches do anything wrong, because so to be a witch is to always have to be better, to be more obedient, to be more careful.
Follow the rules.
So in a way, I'd always wanted to write about women's power or the lack of it, and craft was always going to be, a beautiful and obvious way to do that. So I had a blast creating the world of Sanctuary. Yeah, I loved it.
I was actually one of my questions was going to be the differences that you added into America in addition to the witchcraft element. Was that the main focus that pulled on those world building skills that you obviously have tried and tested?
I love world building. I love world building, and I think, as I say, that question of, because I love writing worlds that basically look exactly like ours and work almost exactly like ours, but have magic. So a lot of fantasy, it doesn't do that. The worlds look completely different. I love those kinds of books, where you just escape into a world that is magical, like all the rules are different, everything is different. But for some reason, as a writer, the things that I really, really love, and I think it's probably because there's that other half of my brain, so half of my brain will be reading high fantasy and, like saying, God bless Sam Shannon for making dragons fashionable again. And the other half of my brain is is watching current affairs documentaries and following politics. So in my books, those two sort of parts of my brain kind of come together, I guess. So yeah, that's why the worlds that I find really, really fascinating are the ones that sort of look and walk and talk like ours. But then, of course, once you've brought magic into the equation, that knocks everything off.
Yeah.
Like, it really can knock it off. So you have to understand really, really well, like, how and why you can have a world which has this one huge difference, like this one weird trick, as they say on Facebook, the one weird trick, and yet still has ended up looking and sounding and being recognizable like ours. So, that's the thing that I spend most time on, and I'm one of those people who's sort of like somewhere in between, the plotter and the pantser, which is that I need to have, in particular with something like Sanctuary, so that was plotted out really tightly in advance. But then there were sort of elements that kind of at the beginning, when I had a sort of a sense of a plot that was very much driven by relationships, I then had to work out how that became possible in a world with magic. So then there was that sort of secondary layer of I hadn't anticipated how much sort of legislation. That sounds really boring, but if you've got a world where somebody's facing the death penalty for murder by magic, you've got to know what the police handbook says. If you've got a book that's effectively a cop running an investigation, you not only need to know how a police investigation works, you need to know how that investigation would have to work differently if there's a possibility that magic was involved, particularly if the police investigator isn't a witch. So there's a lot of.
But I was gonna mention another character there, but then I don't know if you want that character to be a surprise, which completely relating to your most recent comment about knowing the rules of how they assess crimes when witchcraft is involved. I wanted to mention a new character that's always introduced partway through, but I wasn't sure.
So Rowan,
Okay.
I'm really happy to mention Rowan. So
Rowan's great.
Yeah, because Rowan is Rowan is a magical investor. Rowan is exactly that. They are a response to me thinking, well, hang on a minute, like my cop, Maggie. I love Maggie.
I meant to mention Maggie as well. So many great women in this book.
She has, I think because I'm a Slytherin, I'm secretly drawn towards good-hearted Gryffindor type people, kind of Griffin puffs. I look at them and I'm like, how do you exist in the world? Like, how do these sort of like good, brave people exist? So yeah, I love my Griffin puffs, and Maggie, Detective Maggie, is definitely a Griffin puff. So she's a cop who wants the best for everybody, and she's thrown into this magical investigation, and of course sort of realizes sort of fairly early on that there are questions to which she doesn't have the answer because she doesn't know how the magic works. She knows how crime works.
Yes.
So she then calls upon the services of a magical investigator, and Rowan flies in from the other side of the country, and through them we see the other kind of part of the deductive reasoning, like how does magic work? And that actually I thought became a really nice way of being able to sort of set out and share. I mean, what's the point of creating a great magical system if you don't then get to explore it?
I think it was interesting though, because Rowan is one of the only other voices we get at that point that talks about magic other than Sarah and her friend.
Witch, and Sarah is one of the POV characters. So basically, the story is found between three characters. There's Maggie, the investigating cop, Sarah, the town witch, who is the mother of the girl accused of murder, and then Abigail, her friend and coven member, who is the mother of the boy who dies. So those are the three that you hear from. They're the heads that you're inside. So obviously Sarah has her own kind of sort of very intuitive, very compassionate sort of view of magic. But one of the things, who doesn't love an unreliable narrator, right? And one of the things that I wanted to explore with Sarah was how she her own view of magic as a really benign thing, and she only ever wants to help people with her magic. That's her purpose in life. That's her calling as a witch, is to help people with magic. Except what I hope happens is, as the reader goes through, they can see that for all of her good intentions, Sarah has actually done a number of actually quite questionable things. And I'm probably not going to say more than that, but yeah, so it became kind of quite important to me to have sort of somebody on the outside who could also be, while very much a believer in sort of magical rites, as it were, whose purpose is also to investigate kind of crime done by magic, just to sort of de-sanctify it a bit.
Coming back to you saying about Sarah, what she actually does, almost every time, not wanting to reveal too much, but there's the underlying principle in the book that, in terms of the rules of magic, where magic has a cost, but it also needs consent. So she always has people ask her for things because that's what they want. And with obviously not going into too much detail, it does come back to that age-old question of, do people really know what they want? It is what they think they want. But then, of course, as things start to unravel, yes, she was the one who did it. And I have to say, I do quite like Sarah. Not meaning to defend her, but I feel like it might sound like a defense. But yeah. She gives people what they ask for because she wants people to she wants to make people happy. She wants to help them. But then, of course, the first person who gets, she's the one who takes the blame. I know that you mentioned you wanted to look at female friendship and you wanted to explore how strong that really was. The fact that you have the 4 central characters of Sarah, Julia, Bridget, and Abigail, and then 3 female narrators. Yes. Sorry, I'm just talking about the book, and then the whole thing is like, oh, who are these characters? You have to go and buy it to find out. Yes, it's the fact that all these women are at the fore, and that's obviously was quite deliberate for you. Was it so the female marchers in America? Had you always wanted to write a book that was structured in that way, or do you think just seeing that being in America at that particular time was what told you, I need to write this now?
Yeah, I mean, it's to me, because it clicked for me at that moment in time, like I was saying about 10 minutes ago, sort of being in America, seeing that sort of outpouring of female anger, and of course, while I was writing, Me Too happened. And it should be said that a sexual assault is also part of the narrative in this book, and victim blaming.
Yes.
So that was very much kind of came out of the Me Too narrative, and even while I was doing the edits, we had this sort of extraordinary. I was over in the US at the time. I was in New England, and there was the extraordinary kind of testimony of Christine Blasey Ford. I don't know if anybody sort of over here remembers that, but I mean, in America it was huge. This was essentially a judge was being appointed to the Supreme Court, and a woman came forward to allege that he had sexually assaulted her at a college party years before. And again, that narrative, that scenario is present in the book. Obviously, by that point, the book was finished, but I was like, oh my God, just sort of hearing this incredibly brave woman, give her testimony about what had happened to her. And effectively, she was on trial. Her credibility, her integrity, her motives, her own behaviour were sort of all put on trial by the fact that she had come forward to say this. And in the same way, the character in the book who's at the heart of that, who makes an allegation, she is then sort of put through a kind of sort of trial of sort of, reputation, by the media and by her local community. So, it for me, it sprang sort of very much out of that moment, that place, that time.
Mm-hmm. We have mainly talked about the witchcraft element. I was curious, had you always wanted to write?
Sorry, can I just show off my rooming glass here?
Of course you can.
This always
Lovely
makes me
glass.
happy when I drink out of this. That's rooming proper. Anyway, sorry. Yeah.
So I have, obviously I could keep going, I have loads of questions. All the people who are watching and listening, believe me, we obviously could go on. If you do have any questions, do just put them in the chat, and then we will come to them in just a moment. But had you always wanted to write a murder mystery? Had you always wanted to do a whodunit?
God. Yeah, I would say a whodunit rather than a murder mystery, because I've always loved plot. Like, I love books in which stuff happens. As a reader, I love books in which nothing much happens. But the, like the atmosphere and the writing and that, sort of very kind of poetic storytelling. So I'm currently reading Hamlet by Maggie Knight, which I think has just been shortlisted for the Women's Prize and also for the Booker Prize, or one of the other big prizes.
Yes.
Back at the shortlist, and I'm just wallowing in it at the moment. Like an 11-year-old girl is sick. I'm halfway through. That's basically what's happened. An 11-year-old girl is sick. It's a gorgeous book. That's what I love reading. The kind of things I love writing is literally like, this happens, and then you turn the page, and then like something else has happened, and then something else has happened. I just love books in which stuff happens all the time. And twists and turns, and really densely plotted books. I love it. I love the intellectual challenge of sort of puzzling it all out. And I love the fact that it has to come first of all from character. Character has to generate plot. And what's perfect about that is, like, it sounds like a sort of writerly cliche, like, oh, like we all worship at the altar of character. But everything that happens comes from, human conflict, human contradiction, sort of human agency, human desires, human misunderstandings. There's a hell of a lot of that in Sanctuary. Sort of people who want something and then kind of don't realise until they've got it that maybe it wasn't quite. It's almost like those sort of Grimm's fairy tales, or the stories of like when you're bargaining with the fae in like fairy stories. Yeah. You're not super careful about what you ask for. The fae will grant your request, but not quite. Like like the classical myth, doesn't it? Like Tiresias, who wanted Tiresias, who wanted to live forever, but forgot to say, and I want to be young, and so kind of like live forever, getting older and older and older and older. I love that. So in Sanctuary, you have sort of people who've asked for things, but who haven't quite realised everything they were asking for. So yeah, every time something like that happens, the consequences may not come to light for years later. And that's a sort of a big part of Sanctuary, although it's very much told immediately in this kind of joined up investigation right now. You understand that everything that's driving it actually years before.
Absolutely. So we're at 25 to Anne. Hi Anne, nice to see you. Anne has asked, will we get more stories set in the world of Sanctuary?
Oh, now that's a really interesting one, because it was never intended to be a series, but it has been picked up for TV. When I say picked up, I mean it's a script is being written right now. By someone, I can't say who it is yet, but someone who basically created one of the most successful sort of British drama series of the last few years. So they are writing a script.
Okay. I have an idea of the company.
And obviously for me, I mean, like when I started writing it, it had an ending, and it was super important that it be a complete self-contained story. But of course, you fall in love with your characters as you write them. I mean, I can't say who exactly, because obviously some of the characters are dead by the end of the book. So I'm not going to spoiler who makes it through, but like some of them I got incredibly attached to, and there's one in particular her story is so far from over. And of course, you sort of naturally want to kind of to ask, like, well, what happens next?
Yeah.
Because something like this, although it reaches a kind of a resolution, and the immediate situation in Sanctuary is resolved by the end of the book, but then of course it's something that's going to have massive repercussions. So I have written an outline of a book 2. Whether that gets turned into a full-length novel will kind of depend on, if the TV series gets made, if anybody buys the book. I mean, at the moment, it's only out in...
You're a Sunday Times bestseller. Let's not forget that.
Yes, that's a nice start, isn't it? It's a nice start. But it's only just come out in Germany. It's not out in the US until autumn this year. It's out in Sweden in audiobook, but so we're only just getting a sense of, sort of whether there's room for it. So I would love to tell that story.
Yes.
But yeah, I'll have to sort of prioritize it according to whether, enough people want to hear it.
Well, that's very exciting. That was an excellent question from Anne there. I didn't actually realise that there was going to be as much to talk about. Okay, well, do I have another one going through my questions here? Sanctuary is a very small town. It has, it's a very tight-knit community. Maybe, as you say, it's one of those communities where possibly a lot of people know what's happening with everyone else. What was it made you that actually took it? Because there's obviously so much inspiration that's gone into this with the witchcraft elements and the female voices, and wanting to interlace that into a modern day America. What made you set it in a small town location in that kind of setting?
Well, in one sense, sort of writing a book set in America was quite a sort of daunting prospect for me. Because obviously, if your book is then going to be read by people in America, I mean, I think I'm still scarred by sort of reading Harry Potter fan fiction that had been written by people who are British, which that probably sounds awful, but like there are just sort of so many kind of little sort of notes and moods and details that are kind of like sort of just off in some of that stuff, because it was written by people who just sort of didn't know kind of like the rhythms of everyday life in a British boarding school. Then again, who does? But so I was a little bit anxious about being able to create the world of Sanctuary authentically. So I knew it had to be, it really felt like it had to be an American book. I was a bit apprehensive about that. So in a way, the setting is one that is very familiar to me. I come from, a small town not far from the coast, down in the south of England. As I say, I went to this I was kind of the odd one out at this sort of quite posh school, and all of the other girls, a lot of the other girls at my school, they had these kind of like these big posh houses, like the wealthy parents, a little bit like some of the parents in the book. So that sort of small town vibe, and that kind of sort of like everybody knows everybody, like your parents would bump into your teachers in the supermarket, that sort of thing. So everybody knew your business. So that world was very familiar to me. So that meant I could write something that I felt like I knew. And then the other bit, the other component for making it like a kind of a small town was, obviously that's where the witch persecutions began. That's what drives it. This sort of sense of someone present in your community, but whom you don't sort of wholly know or trust. I went to Salem while I was writing the book, and I had a sort of like a historical map of Salem, and it's an amazingly well preserved town. They've got a lot of sort of like the old wooden buildings, almost nothing from the original period of witch burning, but houses that are centuries old, very unusually in the US. Still, you can see like the street plans, and you can really get a sense of kind of like how small that community was, and therefore kind of like the greater horror when it was believed that people sort of stepped out of line, that people were doing things that you didn't know, secret things, that sort of small town paranoia. So so I guess those were kind of the two things that also you can have like a real pressure cooker in a small community. And weirdly enough, the one bit of the plot that I kind of worried about sort of plausibility and whether people would stick with it. Is the fact that it gets quarantined. The town gets quarantined at the end of the book.
I wasn't sure if I wanted to mention that bit or not, because obviously that explains.
I was like,
it explains the bubble.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, it took me a while to work out what that was, but yeah.
Yeah, and I just thought like, oh God, is this going to be sort of straining it a bit for people? Whereas at least if it's a small town and if it's a historical town, then you can understand sort of geographically how that might happen. You might be able to block off roads, I mean, of course, we nobody's questioning the plausibility of that anymore.
No.
You're reading in the papers about small towns that are kind of barricading themselves off. Kind of fascinating little bit there to see that happen. See that last little bit. I try to write books that come true. If they're not, the bit that is
You're very prophetic. Yes, very prophetic. Chadwell Heath, Royer first, has asked, hi Chantal, by the way, has asked, how much of your story do you have figured out before you start writing? You said earlier you're halfway between a plotter and a pantser? So how much do you need figured out before you actually start the story?
Yeah, I mean, Sanctuary, because it's really tight. It's really tight. I was sort of writing from a sort of like 6-sided outline that had. Is that bird song in your garden?
It's a very loud bird, yeah. Yep.
Oh my God.
Yep. So we have blackbirds just nesting up here. It just walks up every so often. It does it actually almost every day at this time. Sorry.
I love it. But yeah, no. So for Sanctuary, I did have I had a sort of a really detailed plot outline. I actually worked really closely with Rachel Winterbottom, who's like my amazing editor at Gallant. Editors are kind of like a sort of closely guarded secret of the book world, like in terms of the degree of the influence that they have and the extent to which they are absolutely integral to a book's creation. And Rachel was absolutely integral to Sanctuary, and we would back this sort of outline back and forth, try and sort of work out solutions to sort of little knotty technical things. How much do you need to show, how much not. But even then, of course, once you've got, once I sort of had an outline that we both felt kind of really worked. Of course, then curveballs get thrown. So as I was saying earlier, like the character of Rowan, we realised Rowan just kind of walked into my head one day. I really love them. They've got a lot of sass, but also a lot of wisdom, a lot of respect. I thought they were really crucial for showing us another part of the magical world. And also from a purely practical plot point of view, they are completely essential.
Yes.
It
solves so many problems.
Yeah, and it may sound crazy, but I hadn't realised how much I needed them until they just walked straight into the book one day. So there's sort of lots of little bits like that. There's little sort of characters that just sort of like turn up and say, hello, you didn't know you needed me, but I'm going to be one of your new favourites. So that happens. I love that so much. That kind of keeps it interesting for you as well. I mean, you don't want a sort of an outline beforehand that is so rigorous that effectively what you're doing is kind of painting by numbers. I think that would be a really joyless, lifeless kind of process. But certainly, like Sanctuary was heavily plotted beforehand.
Was that mainly for the murder mystery to get all the different bits in the right order, and also interweaving the stories of what's happened to people previously. Obviously you've got to gradually reveal that in a very particular way. Were those the elements you had to plot the most?
Yeah, you have to hit all of your reveals. And obviously the big thing. Is that your bird?
No, I don't own it. It's just very loud.
Incredible! I'm just mentioning here, like, because my arms are getting noisy outside the window.
I'm very sorry.
And
I was straining to hear you then. I'm like, I wish I could just tell it to shush.
No, don't tell it to shush. I love it.
Everyone's been serenaded. We're actually at 1:45. Vic. We've talked for 45 minutes.
We have.
Yes.
Yeah, and there was me going, oh, no one will listen for more than half an hour.
Yeah, you were saying like, no one will turn up. We'll just do it. Yeah, we'll play it by ear. It'll be fine. But this has been great. Pardon?
I've loved it.
I know, it's lovely. Well, I suppose it helps that we've met before and we've done events together, which certainly helps. Yes, that was Yalk was our first one. Was that right?
Yeah.
Great Yalk. So Sanctuary, written by B.B. Jones. Would you mind sharing your paperback? Because you can get this one, but this is the hardback, so focus on that one. Or the ebook, and respecting social distancing. Or I know there are lots of different websites that are sharing independent bookshops that are still processing orders. So do support your local indie, or to be honest, any indie, because it's a matter of postage these days. I can't say please join me in giving Mood Dames a round of applause. So I'll just give you one from me. Thank you so much for joining me on this sunny Sunday afternoon. Me and my bird, apparently, still going.
That is the loudest bird in Bristol.
Still going. Just as well as a nice bird and not a seagull. I'm glad it's not a seagull.
And I look forward to tuning in. Is Chimera going to be doing more of these talks? Yes.
Yes.
Brilliant.
Chimera have plans. I'm not going to commit Chimera to any plans because, but yes, certainly keep posted on social media and on their website, and they will absolutely let everyone know what's going on. I think they're going to stick to the weekend of the festival dates. So it's June. So remember to pencil that weekend in, that first weekend of June. All right. Well, have a lovely evening. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining me in my garden. And enjoy your Pellegrino.
Who turned up and has stayed up. How's that? Hi. Hello. Penelope.
Yes, thank you for everyone.
Hello.
Oh, hi, Sarah.
Oh,
I see Sarah's there.
Waves. The Waves Magical Rocker. Hello. Joe Cat.
Oh, I've been told I can commit away.
Aqua Ellen. Chicky First.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just thanking you all. I kind of forget that there's an audience sometimes because I suppose I'm trying not to realise other people are watching. It's the 7th of June, everyone. Put that in your diaries. Chimera Festival will be, I'm guessing, on a variety of platforms. Sorry, Vic, I'm talking to you.
And I just have everybody's here. This is great. Oh, Small Book Dragon, hello. These people are probably like tuned in for 5 minutes and then thought, the sun's still out. It's lovely to see you all, Dr. Anticand. And the fabulous Clem, hi. Julio. Hogs of War.
Hogs of War, that's my friend Nicola. Hi, Nicola. I hope you feel better soon. I know you're not feeling well, so shout out to you.
Love to everybody.
Lots of things for you. What was that?
I just saying thank you to everybody who's like little waves and everyone who tuned in.
I like the waves. The waves are great.
And our drinks and your bird. But no. Okay. Bye.
I'm so sorry about the bird.
Bye.
Bye.